Welcome back. If you just joined us, our guest on this episode of Question Time is the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Babachir Lawal. Stay with us. Could we put things in the proper perspective now? Let's look at the manner of arrest of these judges. The DSS says it was a snake operation, but some observers feel that that was a Gestapo operation in which was very unbefitting of the judges.
There's nobody above the law. Don't use the word status when the system accuses somebody of corruption. What is his status? What status does he have? If he decides to use the position that God has given him, that the government has graciously allowed him to serve the people to his own advantage, what status is that? What status has the secretary to the government if he chooses to be a thief?
So what happens to some of the APC top members that have been fingered in this case?
You are not listening to Big Benga. I say I can set up an appointment for you with the Attorney General or with the Chairman EFCC, and then they can tell you what they are doing about it, and if they have sufficient evidence. It's not just enough when I'm taken to court, I stay there and say I'm being witch hunted. Of course, I'll say that now. These people have a lot of money. These people have taken billions of naira out of the system, and these people are expert at propaganda. They are doing propaganda. Like the president says, corruption is fighting back. But I mean, they are fighting back with blunted tools.
Now, let's zoom into your office now as the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. Your office is currently under investigation for an alleged diversion of 1.3 billion naira funds meant for the IDPs. Could you put things in the proper perspective?
Who is investigating? The Senate?
It was raised at the Senate.
You know, these are the issues of the separation of powers that people abuse. And people use, I do know that, for example, I don't have immunity to accuse you without proof. But when I understand when I'm on the floor of the National Assembly, I can say anything I like and I'm immune to prosecution. And people are abusing it. In this case, people have maliciously and wickedly abused their privileges in the National Assembly. I remember, now let me give you the reason why PINE. I think it's related to PINE, isn't it? It's called Presidential Initiative on the Northeast. This organization was set up by President Goodluck Jonathan. Thank God for him. And it used to be run under the Ministry of Finance, under Minister of State Finance. So when we came on board as a government, we were wondering who was running all these Northeast programs. Everybody, until one day, the National Assembly members from the Northeast paid me a courtesy call, thinking that it is my office that's running it. I said, no, it's not my office, even though I'm from the Northeast. So I phoned the vice president. Hey, Oga, who is running PINE? He said, I think it's your office. So it was budget time. And I phoned the Minister of Budget. Budget, who is running PINE? He said, oh, I think it's your office. I said, me? Oh, I think it is NSA. Now, what happened was that there was a consultant, a special advisor to the former NSA, who was on the committee of PINE.
Sorry, just to put things clearly, PINE means Presidential
Initiative on the Northeast, yeah. So, long story, really, and it must be put out. So, the man who was then claiming to be leading the PINE was a special advisor to the then NSA. Now, of course, special advisors lapse with the government in which they serve. So I said, well, you can no longer run PINE. We'll take it on and organize it. At that time, that's 2015, there was 2.5 billion naira in the PINE account, sitting, doing nothing, paying consultants. I understand at one time they were using it to buy prefabricated schools or things like that. Now, the principle the PINE uses is this, and I tell you, I set up the principle. I don't run PINE. PINE has a secretary. They have their own infrastructure, supervised by a PAMSEC. There are 23 of such agencies in this government, in this office. PINE, I say PINE. we want people to return, IDPs. We have to encourage them to leave the camps. Now, when they leave the camps back to their homes, original homes, we must guarantee that they are able to engage in productive work, the type they were used to before they were driven out of their land. Now, before they go, we must be able to encourage them that there will now be security, which means police. And you know that the military are not good at providing civil security. So the idea is rebuild the schools that were burnt. So when children, and furnish them. So when children come, they can go back to school. We will rebuild the police stations. And within the limits of resources available, even the police barracks, so that the policemen can return and provide the necessary security as confidence building for people to return.
Yeah. Did all this expenditure follow the standard accounting principle?
Of course, of course.
Let's now look at the recent return and release of the Cabals girls. Some people are arguing that in a negotiation of this high level, that there must have been a swap or a form of exchange. What is the true situation?
I would like to beg you to excuse me this question because it has larger security implications. Out there, there are still over 200 women and children under captivity by Boko Haram, and the government is committed to bringing them back safely, and any discussions on the release of these girls in the mode in which they were released can jeopardize the security of those still in captivity and jeopardize the processes of getting them released.
What's the interest of the international parties to these negotiations? Because we understand that it's enlisted the mediation of the ICRC and also the Swiss government.
It's not for me to say the negotiations were not, if they were, was not handled by the Office of the Secretary to the government. It was a purely security issue, and the modalities in which they did and the partners or collaborators, willing collaborators that assisted in the process, it's not something the Office of the Secretary to the government knows or needs to know, because it's purely a security matter.
Before we wind down this conversation, 2019 is a time when people are focusing to properly assess this administration in terms of what it has achieved. Don't forget, this is a time of ovation of unemployment. Your party promised 3 million jobs annually, but what statistics have shown is that 6 million jobs are being lost annually. And in terms of infrastructure, power, health institutions, healthcare delivery, what kind of legacies should Nigerians expect from this government?
I assure Nigerians that by the end of 2017, Nigeria will be in a boom environment economically. Security would have been well within the limits of human society. People will be able to move from one place to the other feeling secure, and not because we want to win election, not because we want to win election. The idea is to put Nigeria on the path of growth, provide employment for the teeming youth and even adults, and bring security to Nigeria. Whatever it takes for us to do that, we will do it, because Nigeria needs to be prosperous.
Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Engineer Babachir Lawal, thank you for making our time to be part of this episode of Question Time. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Benga.
And that's it on this episode of Question Time. You may also send us a comment on our various social media platforms showing on your screen. Join us next week on another exciting episode of the show on Channels Television. Many thanks for watching. I'm Benga Ashiru. Bye for now.